Mr. President, dear colleagues, thank you for giving me the possibility to give you some information about the changes we have had in Sweden lately, and there will be more to come, I think. I would just like to start where we came from, because, as you know, in 1970, all the pharmacies were bought up by the Swedish state, and we had a state monopoly. And all the pharmacies were collected in one pharmacy state-operated chain, Apoteket AB. So that was the solution we had from 1970 to 1910, actually, because then it changed, 40 years. The politicians, of course, they could see a need for change in many ways, especially when it comes to community pharmacy. But, of course, they did not realize that during these 40 years, Apoteket AB, the state monopoly, did not only run a number of pharmacies in communities, it was a whole distribution system with hospital pharmacies, multi-dose dispensing, production centers, and so forth. So it was and is still quite complicated system to change. The background for the deregulation in Sweden in 2009 was that we actually had a new government, a right-oriented government. And that right-oriented government decided to change many state systems and state monopolies that we had in Sweden in that time. The only outcome of this wish was the state-owned pharmacy monopoly. That was what came out from this. It had been discussed for many years. We had a discussion in the European Court, but as you know, the European Court, they didn't force the Swedish government to change, but they did it themselves in 2009. The new law came in force, and in January 2010, the actually changed happened. What was the goal then? Well, they would like to see an increased availability of medicines, both easier to get OTCs and easier to come in contact with pharmacies. They would like to increase the effectiveness in medicine distribution, and one of the thoughts was to have an integration between pharmacy and wholesaling. That is still not happened. They would like to still have a price press on all the prescription medicine and the non-prescription medicine, regulation for prescription medicine, and competition for OTC medicines, and that would lower the prices. Didn't happen. And of course they would like to still have some kind of focus on improving the use of medicines. What happened then? Well, the ownership was totally free. Anyone can own a pharmacy except the industry and a physician, a medical doctor. They cannot own. Otherwise, anyone can own a pharmacy. The establishment, totally free. You can open a pharmacy wherever you like, whenever you like. OTCs outside pharmacy, the majority of all the non-prescription medicine went outside pharmacy. A very few stayed in pharmacy for certain reasons, but the possibility to sell OTCs was very, very big for groceries and petrol stations and etc. They also would like to see more pharmacies and extended opening hours. That was one of the goals. When it comes to competence in pharmacy, they decided that, of course, there must be a pharmacist in operation. There must be pharmacists when the pharmacy is open, otherwise you cannot have it open. But in Sweden we have two levels of pharmacists. We have the bachelor and we have the master. And by law it's enough with the bachelor. And then it should be by law also a medicine responsible person, mainly a pharmacist, which has to be quality, look on the quality of the different pharmacies. And they can be in charge for 3 pharmacies actually. Prices, when it comes to regulated prices in prescription medicines, we have an authority who decides the in price and the out price. to pharmacy. And to that, of course, we have a reimbursement scheme for patients that they have to pay a certain amount, but that's not the topic for today. And on free pricing on non-prescription medicines, both in pharmacy and outside pharmacy. During these 40 years, of course, a lot of infrastructure had been built up in the Swedish pharmacies, like IT, e-prescriptions, a national system for e-prescriptions and so forth. And all that was taken out from Apoteket AB and created and put in a new created state-owned company, which still operates like an e-health authority, you could say. Then they decided that to sell out a number of pharmacies. And the first decision was that still have a state-owned pharmacy operated. So Apoteket AB, 1/3 of all the pharmacies should stay in Apoteket AB. In that time we had 916 pharmacies. That's one pharmacy in 10,000 inhabitants at that time. 1/3 still in Apoteket AB, 150 pharmacies set aside to be able to be bought by individual pharmacists, and the rest sold out. 616 pharmacies sold out in 9 different clusters. They clustered the pharmacies. It was pharmacies in healthcare areas, it was pharmacies in shopping stores, in high streets, and they clustered these kind of pharmacies to make it more interesting for buying a certain cluster, so to speak. The outcome, I won't go through that, the outcome was that 3 private equity company and 1 wholesaling company bought the pharmacies. Of these 9 clusters, 4 buyers. And the only one who was in the business was Kronas Droghandel Retail AB, owned by Oriola KD, that's a Finnish wholesaler. The other ones was private equity companies coming in and buying pharmacies. They have all left now, and today the second biggest, I can show that in a few minutes. This was where it came from, a very simple model where 1 state-owned company operating all the pharmacies and 2 wholesalers. Tamro is Phoenix, KD is the Finnish Oriola. To a very complex model with many actors on prescription medicines and non-prescription medicines. And we have increased the numbers of pharmacies with almost 400 pharmacies. But there is still a possibility to increase the numbers. Today we have approximately 1 pharmacy in 7,000 inhabitants. So there is still room for more pharmacies, of course. Today, this is the number of pharmacies. Apoteket AB is still the biggest pharmacy chain, state-owned. The second one is Apoteket Hjärtat, and that is now owned by the biggest grocery dealer in Sweden, ICA. They have bought both Vårdapoteket and they bought Cura. So now the grocery is the second biggest one. The number of totally independent pharmacies opened by and run by pharmacists is approximately 20-25. All the others are in chains. Some of these are internet pharmacies. I can see that the Nätapotek is not translated, but Nätapotek is internet pharmacies. And we have 7. And they can operate both with OTCs and prescription medicines, as we have a national e-prescription model. The e-prescriptions are stored in a national database and accessible for both patients and pharmacies wherever you operate. We can also say that approximately 6,000 places you can buy OTCs today, mainly groceries and petrol stations. And the development has been that it's a limited number. In theory, they can operate and sell a huge number of OTCs, but of course, they only have the big brands in their stores. One change has been now that paracetamol has been drawn back from these sellers to pharmacy again. So now we have paracetamol back in pharmacy. The opening hours has increased from normally at that time 42 hours a week to 54 hours a week. What are the challenges? I will go through this list. Competition, of course. There's a big competition in community pharmacy. We have increased the number of more than 400 pharmacies, and we have more than 6,000 OTC sellers outside pharmacy. Of course, the competition between pharmacies or pharmacy chains is very, very big. The hospital market has also changed. The county councils put out tenders to run the hospital pharmacies. And they do that by contract. You can run a hospital pharmacy for 2 to 4 years. Then it's out on tender again, which means that it's very difficult to have a very long-term strategy in running hospital pharmacies. And the county council also split the contracts in different parts. One is perhaps to distribution, another one is to services. So it's a very complex and split market. And the multi-dose market is the same. It's also by contracts, and today we have 3 actors buying. And that is also a very complicated model of having tenders in multi-dose market, because you have teams in competence and so forth, and after 2 years you might be out of the market. Medicine supply. Well, the customers, they complain that the supply has been poorer. And there might be some reasons for that. One reason might be, of course, that the community pharmacy market did change in total, but the wholesaling market did not change. We still have a very special model we share with Finland, a one-channel distribution model, which means that one specific medication is only in one wholesaler. That is the common model still. It's beginning now to change, but still the majority of the supply, if you want a certain medicines, you had to go to one of these 2, because they have divided the market. And of course that was a rational thing to do during a state monopoly, but it's not a rational thing to do now. And of course we have 400 more pharmacies, but we don't have an increase of number of prescriptions. So of course it has been diluted. And we have also the problem with generic substitution. Each month we have to change a preferred product, and you must only dispense that one by law. Otherwise you don't get reimbursed, and the patient doesn't get reimbursed either. And we have no right to return. So of course you are very careful when you order to your pharmacy the stock each month. You don't want to have medicines in stock that you can't sell. And of course we have, with supply, we have an international problems, of course. When it comes to competence, as I mentioned, we have 2 degrees. We have the master degree, 5 years, which is the same that we have in whole Europe. But we also have a 3-year master, a 3-year bachelor degree, both educated at the pharmacy university. And this bachelor degree you can see in Sweden, Finland and Norway. So it's a very small market. Unfortunately then, in law, they chose to declare that the bachelor is enough to have in pharmacy. The competence from a bachelor is enough to dispense, to inform, and so forth. Every pharmacy chain has, of course, a number of pharmacists employed, and most of the big pharmacies, of course, also have pharmacists employed. But in the majority of pharmacies, there is a bachelor running the business. They are less expensive, of course. We can also see that the masters have been more and more attractive to the healthcare sector. We have now increased the number of pharmacists, 5-year pharmacists employed in county council for healthcare sector from 2009, perhaps 5 or 10, to today more than 500. So the pharmacists go to the healthcare. which is a good thing in a way. In certain areas then, of course, we have a lack of pharmacists. In the rural areas, you can find problems to employ pharmacists, especially, of course, the 5 year, but even the 3 years. Out of these 400 new pharmacies, a handful has been opened in rural areas. The other ones are in the cities, the big areas. The margins, when we had the monopoly time, it was 16.5% in general. To get more interested buyers, the government increased the margin with 2% to 18.5%, and that's the model we still have. It's approximately 18.5%. It's a regressive margin. We have a fixed part and a percentage of the price. And the maximum reimbursement, or not reimbursement, the maximum money that goes to the pharmacy is approximately 200 Swedish crowns. That's 20 euros. Nevertheless, the price of the medicine, it may be 1,000 euros, but only 20 euros goes to the pharmacy. That's the maximum. And of course, the generic substitution means quite high margins, but very low income, because it's the money you live on, not the percentage. Well, what about the professional outcome? Of course, as I said, many new pharmacies, we have the same number of prescriptions. This means to survive, you have to sell other things. You have to focus more and more on retail. To sell, of course, non-prescription medicines, but you have to sell a lot of other things as well. There is no restriction actually in law what a pharmacy can sell. There is no restriction in that. But of course, the pharmacies are very carefully when they put in new things to sell, because the profile of being a pharmacy want to be kept, and to be a part of healthcare want to be kept. And the system which the pharmacies are reimbursed do not give any incentives to develop services. We have a number of services in pharmacy, and the patient has to pay for them. And they do, especially measure of high blood pressure and so forth. But the number of services is quite limited still. It will be increased, and there are a number of chains who work very hard with this, but still very few. So we can see that focus has changed from being very professional, being very focused on counseling, on medication and so forth. You have to take more and more time in selling other things in pharmacy to be able to survive. Now we have a left-oriented government again. And actually this autumn we will have a new investigation, so to speak, on the pharmacy business, because the new government thinks that we have perhaps gone a little bit too far in the commercial area, too far in retail business. They would like to see the pharmacies more focused on what they are there to do, actually medication and counseling and so forth. But of course this means that you have also to find out new ways to give that incentives to pharmacies to develop that kind of things. Otherwise that will not happen. We will see what will happen, and I look forward to come back, or perhaps not I, but someone else from Sweden come back and tell you about the changes that the new government might come up to. Thank you.